Welcome to the Puck Bunker, episode 19. I'm Rocco Zappia, joined by the man who can hit a softball out of any municipal ballpark in Ontario, Darren Boyce. How are we doing today?
Two-sport athlete.
Oh, you're more than two-sport athlete. Man,
yeah, that's true. Leisure sport athlete. I'm doing okay, Rocco.
If there was a leisure sport Olympics, I think you might actually make it.
You'd be right competitive.
Yeah, you'd be competitive for sure. You'd be able to hold his own. An average Joe's versus professional players, Boyce would be a good guy to do that. We got a couple topics today. I got to see Michael Misa this week. Sunday afternoon he was in Ottawa, take on the 67s, and he's really good at hockey. Newsflash. Yeah. This just in, we discovered Michael Misa today. Very big sleeper in this year's upcoming draft. But he was.
Do you think Dave Cameron figured that out?
Well, Misa and Perek, I think they had a little bit of a bone to pick with Cameron, and they took it out on those two guys. Kicked the 67s up, down, sideways all afternoon. My goodness, Perek, what a cheese, Perek. He's something else. He had a hat trick.
Yeah.
Has a hat trick as a defenseman. He's got 21, 22 goals, they still got almost 30 games left in the season.
Yeah. I mean, might get 100 points.
But not good enough to play for Team Canada.
Yeah, well, their power play struggled, and they didn't bring the best power play quarterback in the CHL. So
wouldn't want to have.
Anyway, we've already talked about that, but yeah,
he is a good player. My goodness, what a colossal fuck up that was. Misa was really good, man. He was really good. He had a quiet first period, well, quiet by his standards, and then they really just took over his. He's really good in the dirty areas of the ice. He's really good in the corners, and he's really good down low. He's really, really good at fishing pucks out. Now, 67s fucking stink this year, so everyone kind of looks good against them. So it's actually kind of harder to get good information because they're a little bit of a smaller team, not super hard to play against. And
but they made some trades too, right?
Yeah, and I can only evaluate what I watch, and so I watch the 67s because that's where I live. But Misa was dominant, man. He wins most of his puck battles, forced turnovers, all the things that we've seen, all year. He showed. It's hard not to put that guy at 6'1", number 2 on the board over Hagens and whoever else at 5'10".
To me, I think he's by far the best forward, I think, of this class. I don't think it's. I don't think the other guys. Again, I don't think those other guys are close. And I know a lot of people have Hagens is above him. I think it's actually Misa, and there's a divide. That would be kind of my opinion there.
Okay, but there's things that Hagens does better than Misa.
There's some. Like Misa does more things better.
Misa does more things better, but there are the things that Hagens does better might translate to a bit more offense. I'm just playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but those things might translate to a bit more, like he might put up more points, and that wouldn't surprise me. So I don't think it's by far better. I personally have Misa ahead of Hagens, but I don't think it's by far. I think that's a pretty good debate.
Yeah, well, it is for most. I mean, that's a lot of people kind of, it's Misa or Hagens kind of, which one's the top forward. I mean, I've been pretty set on Misa as the top forward since we kind of reviewed him on one of our, maybe I think it might have been our first episode. I think it
was our first one because he came out.
He's the best guy. Yeah, and I still do. Like, even just watching him, following up and watching him again, I haven't really spotted anything that I'm, maybe worried about or maybe a bad habit or something. Whereas with Hagens, I've seen some bad habits or some things that concern me a bit more. But I mean, you still see the top line skill with Hagens. It's just I see more things that concern me. Whereas with Misa, I don't have as many concerns. And the ones I was concerned about, physicality, even maybe even defending as a highly offensive player. From what I've seen, I think those questions kind of been answered to me. I mean, when I see him live, I mean, he's more physical than he was. As you said, he wins puck battles now. He's really good at creating turnovers in the neutral zone. I think it's kind of a misconception, especially when you heard in the World Juniors, like, oh, we don't need a one-dimensional offensive player. Like, he's not a one-dimensional offensive player. He can do pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I overvalue that a little bit. I just think him as a hockey player, I think his hockey sense tool is better than Hagen's, and I don't think that's really hard to teach. And so that probably is why I have him ahead. But then again, I had Daneway ahead of Hagen's too, probably for the same reason. And that's probably the skill bias that I have. But I mean, just me.
Okay. But are we going to go down this rabbit hole? Okay. Hagen's has more natural skill than Daneway. And he's better. He's a more highly skilled hockey player. With the puck on his stick, he has more. With the puck on his stick. Yes. So that's going to get him probably drafted ahead of Daneway because
Higgins might. Absolutely.
Just listen. Higgins has skill that most guys don't have. And there is a factor that goes into it of, despite certain flaws, you just happen to be fucking better than everybody. So that's going to go into it too. And I think that's where you and me are going to have a pretty hefty debate is Daneway versus Higgins, because I think that there is a level of upside that Higgins has that Daneway doesn't. That said, you might win me on the argument that who would you rather have in the playoffs, because that might be Daneway.
Yeah, and there's other parts to it. Like, I think even with the Daneway, I think there's more. Again, people kind of question his upside, but I don't, because he's 6'2" and he's $175. Like, he's going to play at over 200 pounds. Like, that's a lot of development. And especially for a player that seeks contact and is willing to use his body to shield pucks, like, that's only going to help. Like, that's only going to help him. And we also talk about maybe like his skating too. Again, he's not a burner. He's a good skater, but he's a guy that if he gets stronger will be a better skater.
He has a much better 200-foot game. There's not much doubt about that. I just don't think.
I think the questions I have with the rankings,
a lot more points. A lot.
Yeah, but the thing I kind of question with some of the rankings is like when they talk about Daneway is just like, oh, like he doesn't have as much potential. Whereas I'm looking at the body of the player, I'm like, I think he does actually.
I think he'd be a 70+ point centerman.
That's a really really good player if he's a 200-foot player. That's a winning player.
That's why I have him in my top 5.
Yeah. So anyway, that's an argument for another day.
What do you have, Martone 5? I guess we just did our top 5. Might as well stop at 5.
Well, there's our top 5 as of today. But that'll be coming out soon. We'll do our full list, at least the 32 anyway.
Yeah. Oh, and one other thing. Thanks to everyone who watches and subscribes. We went over 100 followers on YouTube, which might not be maybe all that many to some people, but we were really excited about it. So thanks for tuning in. And if you know someone who might like the show, please pass it along. With that, we're going to get into a couple prospect profiles. We're going to do 3 guys today. Me and Boyce are going to each do a guy the way that we usually do. And then we got a third guy that's just pretty fun to watch. We'll kind of present that together. So, Boyce, I'll turn it over to you. Who do you have to talk to us about today?
All right. So I have Cameron Schmidt, who is he's not a controversial player. I just want to say there's some divide on where he's ranked by a lot of pundits and a lot of outlets. So he's a January 2007 birthday, 5'7", 160 pounds, basically right winger. So he's a very small winger. So he plays for the Vancouver Giants of the WHL. As of today, he has 40 games played, 32 goals, 21 assists for 53 points. Is a -6. Just so kind of we can look at the divide of where he's ranked on certain lists. We have guys like Craig Button who have had him, in the top 10. I believe he might have even have been top 5 in the last one. I'm not quite sure. I think, but anyway, we have him in top 10. Then we have other outlets who have him basically in the mid 30s. So there's a big divide on where he is going and kind of pundit lists. In terms of a kind of a scouting report of him, he's a pretty solid skater for his size. The only issue is that because he's small, he has to be he has to be a lot better skater than other guys, just because he doesn't have as much to work with. So I wouldn't call him a burner per se, but I mean, he is a pretty solid skater, pretty strong on his feet, really low center of gravity. So really, I do think he's actually quite hard, to knock off the puck when he does have it. I just don't think he's, maybe incredibly, the shiftiest of players. He's shifty enough, though. I mean, it's pretty solid. He's a solid skater. His best asset is his shot, though. I think he has the best shot in the entire draft class. I mean, he's really good, in terms of different ways to score, really good at finishing in close, has lots of moves in close, lots of patience in close. He'll wait goalies out. He can shoot from range and beat goalies cleanly from range, even when they see the shot. That's from every angle of the ice. Has good shot, can shoot it off the rush, can shoot it kind of standing still. Could shoot a hard one-timer. Even on the rush, one of these clips here, he goes on the rush, finishes it on backhand. He's got a pretty hard backhand too. And he scores goals. I mean, he finds, low blocker, for instance, he hits that spot multiple times. He can beat guys shelf. He can beat guys, if you're looking top shelf, he's going right beside kind of goalie's necks, which is really, little tip. That is the easiest spot to score on guys because they can't get their gloves to it. So he's very good in that range. That is his best skill. I mean, puck skills are pretty good at shielding, really good hand-eye. I think he has actually a pretty strong stick. It's just small, obviously. He's also a shooter that can pass. He can make some really highly dangerous plays there. Now, my issue with his playmaking is that, for the most part, he's trying to make the most offensive play possible on most occasions. He's not really going to make the simple play. It's, we're going to look to score right here. So again, that's good. He can do that. He can execute that. But at times, that could get him into trouble where, he gets picked off, stuff like that. So, I mean, at the next level, he'll have to maybe dial that down a bit. But counter that, he's such a good shooter that the fact that he can actually pass the puck, it actually makes his shot more dangerous. The fact that he has that diversity, that's really good for an offensive player. So speaking of, again, offensive, capabilities, again, he has that diversity and the ability to score. The downside of his offense is I just don't think he's totally a play driver. I don't think he's consistently making his teammates better like some of the other guys that may be ranked highly in this draft. And again, he doesn't make the right decision all the time. However, he's also the guy you could put on the ice and it's quick strike offense. This guy could, make something out of nothing. That's the type of player we're looking at here. Now, downside, I don't see what he brings really much defensively. I think he kind of lags in the defensive zone. I don't think, there's much more effort offensively than there is defensively. I don't see the forecheck really ability. Again, maybe I'm not sure if it's effort related or what it is, but it's just not his, bread and butter. So, we'd like to see some improvement there, at least being a present defender, would be helpful here. The other problem is kind of because of his size, even if he does defend, he's not as effective as he would be if he was 5 inches bigger. So, he has trouble getting pucks off of other players. He doesn't win board battles a lot of the time. Even when he is putting an effort or hitting guys, it's not, if he tries to hit guys, it's good, but he's not really having much of an impact on them. And the other part is too, he can kind of get boxed out in the defensive zone pretty easily as well. So he just loses too many battles in that end. is a concern, and you're worried because he's 5'7", 160 pounds, like that's just not going to change. And then you're going to a level where these guys are even bigger, faster, stronger than we are at the WHL right now. So that's, what you're kind of worried about. Do I think he's a top 10 player in this draft? No. But again, I have size concerns. I definitely, to my recollection, I don't believe anybody who's been 5'7" has been drafted in the first round. Do I think it's possible that he could be drafted in the first round? Yes, I do think it's possible he could be drafted late in the first round, strictly because he has a couple very high-end tools that could play in the NHL. His shot can play in the NHL. His offensive ability can play in the NHL. It's whether he can do the other things or improve enough at the other things. And he's going to have to improve his effort level, especially defensively, if he wants to stay in the NHL, because he is at a disadvantage because of his size. So, I mean, in my rankings, he's, again, I'm still kind of figuring out where to put him. I mean, he's after 25 to me. I think he's before 40, though. I mean, he's in that range to me. I agree with some of the pundits there that have him in that area. I don't agree with the ones that have him in the top 10. I posted a highlight clip of him recently. His highlights are outstanding. So when you see his highlights, you look like this guy's unbelievable. But again, it's the other, you got to play into what this looks like at the next level, what kind of room he has for growth. And because of his size, there isn't a lot of room for physical growth, which again, gives me concern in some other areas.
No.
So I guess, what do you think? What did you see that maybe I missed?
No, I generally, I mean, I think his scouting report is pretty consistent, even amongst the people who disagree where his ranking is. So I agree with your scouting report. The things he does well, he does extremely well, and the things that are a concern are about as concerning as they could be. Now, a couple points you made that I'd want to come back to. You mentioned that he's a good but not a great skater, and at that size, you'd like to, you ideally like to see him be a lot more dynamic, and I agree now. But I'm going to give you an example of a guy, and this is where we could kind of pin the people who think his upside's going to hit. Is Alex DeBrincat. Not a great skater, still scores not every year like some people like to say, the guy that scores 40 goals every year. Well, he scored 40 a couple times, and he scores 30 most years. And he's made a career of being a very small player who's not a great skater with an elite shot. So I think that is maybe, if you believe that he's going to be that kind of offensive dynamo, you would have him high, right? Like, why would if a guy's going to score 40 goals even once in his career, he deserves to be higher than a mid-second round pick.
Yeah.
That said, for every DeBrincat, there's 20 other guys like that who don't ever make the league because they're so small and they don't get stronger. They don't learn the defensive game enough. Now, the other thing he said, he's got the best shot in the draft, in your opinion, and I don't know that I would say it. It's up there. It's as good as any, really. Might have a couple guys who could maybe have something to say about that, but he can shoot the puck with the best of them. Now, when would the last time be the guy who had the best shot in the draft doesn't go in the first round? And that's what I say to my, like, I would ideally like to pick a guy like this in the second round, but then you look at the highlights, you look at the shooting ability, and it's like, okay, well, is someone, especially in a year that's not super deep after the 20s, it would be hard to envision at least one team not liking him enough to want to go for it.
I think he's worth the risk after 25. Like, I guess to me, I mean, maybe even after 20 or, wherever that cutoff is that these teams see where there's, guys they think will make the NHL. Like the decision these teams are going to have. So we've talked about guys. We talked like the last analysis we had, like Milton Gastrin, right? Like, do you want this guy who does not have the offensive capability that a Cameron Schmidt has, but probably has the ability to play in the NHL as, you know, an active lower lineup player, you know, score 10, 15 goals a year, something like that. You know, is that the guy you want to take around 25, or do you want to take a shot on a guy that might score, as you said, 35 goals as a winger, as a smaller winger? But again, that's, you know, that's kind of what you have to decide. So I'm not sure which team. Again, I don't know what the team model is. You know, probably if they're more, you know, analytically driven, or, you know, what skill set they're really driven by. There'll be some teams that just will not draft him. I think that is probably true.
I think he's probably the most polarizing prospect in the draft in terms of the range of projections from reputable sources that you see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, we just talked about him. He was, like, again, Craig Button had a 7th at one point, I believe. It might even be still there. I mean, Elite Prospect, I think, have him around 10. I think that's where they have him. I mean, and then there's other outlets that have him in, you know, mid 30s.
What Bob McKenzie
Bob
had him?
McKenzie had him at 30. Again, at 30, which is late first round, which is kind of where I agree with that. I think that's probably the right spot where it's worth the risk to take the guy there. And it's where another team or two might be also willing to take him, which means it'll make him there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of in the range that I personally would be comfortable with him. I think I've got about I'd say at least 20 guys that I would take ahead, and then I'm open to hearing some discussion about it. I'd be more the later it is, obviously, the more comfortable I'd be. I don't necessarily care to draft a small team. If that might be a guy that if I'm a team with 2 first round picks, like a late 20s or something like that, you get in a trade, that might be the kind of time I would take that swing on a guy who, look, he's incredibly gifted offensively. I think he actually, I know you talked about his effort level, like, and it's selective at times, but I do think that, like, generally he seems like he kind of has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and most smaller guys do. So you don't like to bet against a guy that wants to prove people wrong. That said, even if he does hit, like, with, it's a salary cap at the end of the day, like, what I want to bring it right now with his contract and his production and his size and his overall 200-foot game, and I'm like, no, probably not. Even though he is good.
I worry about that later, though.
You do, yes, you
later.
Right?
You do.
But it still goes in, like,
you can get him.
You are what you draft. So yes, it goes. That's a factor later on, the contract stuff. But at the same time, you have to draft with an identity, I think, and it does fit into team identity. And certain teams, like you said, probably won't take him because of he just is not a fit for them. And other teams might think I'll say this, whoever does draft him is going to be convinced they got a steal.
Well, yes, and it's probably a team that is kind of devoid of offensive talent or needs a guy who can really shoot the puck in the system. Like, that's like this Elite's, again, he's the guy that if he's going to play, he's going to have to play in a top 6 and on a power play. Like, he's going to have to be on your power play.
Yes.
And you're like, he's literally going to be in the AHL until there is a spot on your power play for him to play on. Yep. So, I mean, Chicago has picks late in the first round. I don't know. Like, I know they have Bedard, but I mean, like, they don't have a lot of offensive guys. But again, they're small. So,
how many small skill guys can they draft? They have their guys.
No, I know, but I mean, it's again, I'm trying to figure out where he would fit, like what team would he fit with. So again, I'm not quite sure where it would be.
I'd almost be looking at a team that's already or a team that's maybe already good and is looking for a guy that like you said, they don't have a top 6 guy in their system that could come up in a few years and play on a cheap contract and help you get over the hump. That could be a type of place he goes as well.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. But in terms of the player, I mean, so I guess I'm going to end with this. I've watched him a few times now. The first time I watched him, I was kind of, I watched him live too when he played in London, and he scored a nasty goal just by shooting literally just a shot where he ripped bar down. And so he doesn't look like he's doing a lot all game, but then he scores. Like, it's that type of guy. And as I've watched him play, yes, there are flaws, but he has grown on me where I like, because guys don't have this talent. Like, they don't have this get in. Like, it's just nothing's happening, scores. Like, nothing's happening, create a goal.
He's a game breaker.
Yeah. Whereas like some of these other, like the guys I like, obviously are more the guys that control play. You know, they're making good plays all over the game, but they're not. But they also probably don't have the game breaking talent. Whereas they can just if they do, they're the best players. In the league, obviously.
If you had your way, you would draft the most ho-hum, boring bunch of lunch pail.
They're not lunch pail guys, though. But yeah, I do have a bias. But it is like he's not controlling possession. Is the point that I'm saying, right? Like, he's not going to make the right play all the time. You have to be patient with that. But what he is going to do is create offense. Like, he is going to create situations for your team to score.
He could beat a goalie clean from the top of the circles, and that's pretty hard to do.
Yes. And I believe his shot is good enough to do that at the NHL level. And there's not many guys that I've said that in this draft class.
I would be weary of betting against him, although I also might not pick him myself. But I do think he's going to be a point producing player in the NHL. I do think that. So on that basis alone, he's probably a first. I just don't know if I was the GM of a team, if I would pick 33. Yep, that's fine. I don't know if I would use a first. I'd have a hard time with it. But there is a certain point in the draft where you cannot find reasons to not pick him. Because he does. It's like I said about Higgins, he just has a level that other guys don't have that you can't teach. And as a shooter, Cam Schmidt, he can shoot the puck as good as anyone.
We talked about it, right? Especially when you're late first, early second. What are we looking for? We're looking for something that is an elite skill. What is the elite skill of this guy that translates to the league? So that's an elite skill. Like, that is a high-end elite skill.
If you're gonna make a living on one skill, scoring goals is probably a pretty good one to pick.
Yes, it is.
So that's Cameron Schmidt, one of the more highly debated prospects in this year's class. It's going to be extremely interesting to see where he goes, and someone that we're probably going to have to pay some pretty close attention to, especially in the playoffs. We're going to move on. Stick in the Western Hockey League here. I've got a player that I'm going to present here. And we have Peyton Kettles, 6'5", 195-pound, right-handed defenseman for the Swift Current Broncos of the Western Hockey League. 34 games played. He's got 3 goals, 9 points, and 47 PIMs. Now, this is a guy who moves very well for his size, in my opinion. I like his top speed once he gets going, and I do believe that he should be able to keep pace at the next level. It's going to require some improvement over time, but relative to his age, his size, and honestly his stature, his weight, I do think there's a lot of room for him to grow here. And he's I don't really have any questions about his feet as he progresses to pro. Pretty good 4-way mobility here, especially again relative to his size. doesn't get caught flat-footed often, in my opinion. I mean, it happens from time to time, but it's not a regular occurrence. He can keep up with the quicker players for the most part. It's maybe a half step behind starting from a standstill, but that's going to be pretty normal. I don't think we're necessarily looking at a player with a ton of offensive upside here. That's just not really his game, and it's not really his bread and butter. His shots kind of average. It's fine. He's not necessarily shooting to score that much. I don't find, more so just trying to get them through. I don't mind that if he's keeping it simple. His puck skills don't hurt him, and he can actually be really effective when he does keep it simple and he moves it quick. D-to-D passing is good. I've got no issues with that. Same thing with his breakout passing. It's mostly accurate on the tape. He knows how to zip a pass. He doesn't kind of push soft passes through the neutral zone. So you like that. He can get himself into a little bit of trouble if he tries to overhandle the puck or make one too many moves, but he really doesn't do that often. And usually if he does make one move, he gets away with it, and he makes a move and he moves it. So even when he does try to handle it, he's not overdoing it for the most part, and he knows his job is to kind of get it and move the play up the ice. In the offensive zone, I thought he was fine. He's not creating a lot, but he does pick his spots pretty well when he's deciding whether to pinch in or to back off. I would describe his overall puck game or his offensive game as pretty risk averse, which you like. This is a player that I think he knows what he is, and what he is excellent defensively. He reads the rush very well, does a nice job of defending the defensive blue line. If I were going to be a little bit nitpicky, I'd maybe like him to gap up at the blue line and attack a little bit sooner. I think his skating is good enough to challenge guys at the blue line rather than kind of allowing the zone and then pushing to the boards. But that's something that's pretty easy for a guy to work on over a couple of years. Again, it'd be a nitpicky pretty thing. I do like how he defends the rush generally. His reach is obviously excellent. He's 6'5". He's going to have a pretty good reach, and he does a very nice job defending with his stick when the puck carrier gets inside of his reach. Excellent cycle defender. Sticks with his man, and he's very aware of his surroundings. He's always keeping an eye of what's going on around him, while at the same time never really losing his man. For the most part, again, they're teenage defensemen. They're going to lose their man from time to time. The overall product, I'm very excited about in that sense. Very, very good in front of the net. Gets good leverage on guys. Protects the crease very well. Can be mean in front of the crease when he needs to be, and you like to see that because guys need to know that they can't. They've got to earn that ice, and if they want it, it's going to hurt a little bit. Consistent effort for me, shift to shift. Doesn't dog it at all. Works really hard in the dirty areas. Got an excellent physical game, which at 6'5" he should, but he does. He loves to finish hits, and he can hit hard. His board play is great. Pins guys with ease. He's got a good stick on loose pucks. He protects the puck really well with his body when he does win it, so he's able to move it to his partner behind the net or start the breakout. Not often that he loses the puck down low. I think there's some very high-end defensive potential here. He'd be an excellent stabilizing player for me to pair with a highly skilled defensive partner. I think that'd be the ideal scenario for him. Or conversely, he probably has a high enough floor to play in that traditional third pair shutdown role. If any sort of offensive game does emerge as he develops, guys, especially big defensemen, they can randomly start having some good offensive numbers, especially when you're surrounded by all NHL players who can maybe finish some simple plays that you make. But if he does have any sort of offensive game develop, that's a bonus. That's not why you're drafting him, and teams will know that going in. The lack of offensive projection for me will keep him probably outside my top 20 without many second thoughts. But after that, a guy like this could be a great pick. I think Central's got him 26, North America. Bob's got him 45. He's got a very high floor, I think, due to his size, mobility, physical play. So I think we are looking at a full-time. I think we're looking at a future full-time NHL player here down the road. He could have some upside to play higher in the lineup. I think he's got the tools, the size, and the skating. I think are there to play higher in the lineup again. Like I said, maybe with a highly skilled defenseman. So I don't think it's necessarily just third pair duty for him. He's 2 weeks away from being eligible in next year's draft. September 1st birthday, so he's going to be one of the youngest players in the draft. So naturally, that's going to make him, pretty raw with a lot of upside there, a lot of room to grow. He's only 195 pounds right now at 6'5". It's pretty thin. What's he going to be at 225, 230? We could be looking at a guy who's really no fun to play against at all, who can move the puck and skate with you. That's really valuable. I would personally be comfortable with him anywhere, honestly, from the mid-20s onwards. And if he does end up going in round 2, you're probably really excited. You're probably really excited about getting him in the second round. Couple seconds here on the video, boys. You can start giving your thoughts here while this finishes up.
Sure. So I, like you, really liked his skating. I thought he was well above average, moved quite fluidly, both, forwards and backwards, his pivoting and that. It was really good for a big guy. And we had talked about in a previous episode, for instance, Simon Wang, right? Like, we like him late in the first round because he can skate as a big guy. Well, this guy can also skate. He's big, and I think he's just, he's a better player right now, and he's really young for the draft class. So
I don't think he skates quite as well.
Maybe not, but this, again, we're talking about a 6'5" right-hand D who can skate and is physical.
Yes.
These are, again, guys that are really in demand, and that there are a decent number of right-hand shot D in this draft that are big and can skate. I think they're probably all first rounders, and I think this guy fits that model. Now, you say maybe he's outside the top 20, and perhaps he is now. But again, I've talked about this before. We have Mirka and Fiddler, both guys that are right-hand shot, big guys who can skate, and I question their offensive ability just as much as I question Kettles as well. I mean, it is his least translatable skill is his offense. Now, the one thing I will say, though, I actually thought Kettles was, I'm not going to say he was a better defender than them. I thought he was more composed, perhaps. Maybe that's the right way to put it. I thought he looked, again, he had great skating, but he looked very poised, in the games I saw. He was never really under pressure. We talked about before. I mean, he had the ability to, for instance, with Wang, I really liked how he could do high flips under pressure. Kettles had that ability too. He could also make short passes. He had that ability. It was more with Kettles. There's just, when he gets kind of going offensively, he's tunnel vision. He's not going to be a creator in the offensive zone. I think that if that develops, fine. I don't think you can count on that. I agree with you that when you say, though, that he's probably an insulator type. I think that is probably what he is. But I think he can be quite good at it. And he's very physical. I liked Carter Amico literally because he was physical. And that was the elite skill or the high-end skill that he poised to maybe, have him in the second round. Well, this guy has physical ability and he can skate and he's just as big and he actually has more room to grow than Amico does because he's lighter. So this is he's in my first round. This is a first round pick. It does look like he's improved as well, even from the Hlinka.
A lot.
He looks almost like he's gotten more coordinated, kind of grown into his body a little bit.
That's going to happen, though. That should happen.
Well, yeah, but that's noteworthy. And again, that's something you're looking for in your development curve, right?
That's what you want to see. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, like, I remember watching him at the Hlinka, and I'm like, I wasn't impressed, but you could see certain elements of his game where I'm like, okay, there's definitely some tools here, something to work with, and let's see how the progression comes. Well, the progression's come, and it's come along very nicely, I think, for him. And I would say he's to me, noticeably better now than he was at the start of the year. And again, he's tall, he's lanky, he's one of the youngest players in the class. All these things to me speak to upside and room to grow and potential. So don't be surprised if this is a guy that is ranked in the mid 40s now, for the most part, that is going to be talked about a little bit more highly than that the second half of the year. I have him ahead of guys like Amico and Bedkowski, for example.
Yeah, no, I think I do too. After, watching him a couple times, I think that's a very fair analysis. I think
Okay,
there's just a bit more.
Here's one
just
for
a bit
you.
more translatable, translatable skills here.
Here's one for you, and I'm sure we're going to have this debate further. But Kettles or Brustevich?
Kettles is better.
All right. Well, I thought that was going to be a debate. I guess it's not going to be a debate right now.
I really liked what I saw, and I like Brustevich. Again, has nothing to do with him. This is just.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I was just testing if anyone is going to. You like your London guys, so I was just seeing. But
Brustevich is 6'5". Like that's.
Yeah.
Like
you can't teach big.
No. Now, do I think Brustevich has more offensive upside? Yes. I think Brustevich is getting lumped in with. Well, no, but I think Brustevich kind of gets lumped in. He doesn't have much offensive upside. Like I think he does.
If he's going to play,
a lot of these other guys,
he's going to play as a puck mover, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
So
this guy does. Again, there's translatable skill here where this guy should be able to be again with his feet, he can be a really good rush defender. He already is. With his physical ability, he can be a great end zone defender, and he's going to scare guys. He's going to play at 225. Like
he's going to be right. That's what I'm saying. Like
he's going to be a beast. Yeah, and he hits guys already. So like that's what we want to see. This is a guy. These are the type of players I really like. This is a guy. I'll be susceptible to this type of guy.
Me too.
Yeah.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on to the Evil Empire. And, well, come on, we can make Russian jokes. We're going to move over to Russia. And it's funny, boys. You messaged me about this guy Sunday afternoon, and not 2 hours earlier, and I hadn't chatted with you. You both told me about this guy independently, but you messaged me Sunday afternoon. 2 hours earlier, I'm sitting at the 67's Saginaw game, sitting beside my old colleague Grant McKegg. We still watch a lot of games together. So I was chatting with Grant, and he said, "Hey, you got to look at this. You got to look at this Russian guy. He's scoring some pretty wild goals." And I get home, and a couple hours later, I check my phone, and Darren Boyce says, "Hey, you got to take a look at this Russian guy. He's scoring some pretty wild goals." So kudos to you, and shout out to Grant for bringing him up as well. But Boyce, I'm going to let you introduce him, and we'll just go back and forth a little more informally on him, but we got a video to present as well, and take her away.
Well, I went down the rabbit hole on this guy the other day on Sunday. And
what's his name, Darren?
Well, I'm going to give you his name. It's Alexander Zharovsky. So there's kind of on the, on Twitter, there's been a couple people kind of mentioning, oh, there's this guy in Russia that's putting up wild point totals. So decided to watch some video on him, and he's scoring goals like this.
He's 88.
Yeah, he's number 88 here. So basically this guy, when you watch him, he doesn't look like he's that great of a skater. He kind of looks like he's, kind of slow. And then watch what he does. Like, again, he just takes the puck, goes and scores. And he does this numerous times. Now, again, I know this is the Russian Junior League. He's, again, maybe it's not the best league, but since November, he has had a point in every game he's played, I believe, since like November 5th. And a lot of these are multi-point games. And what is interesting with him is you see him, you're like, oh, he's not a great skater. Then you watch him do his crossovers. You watch him do his, start gaining speed on his turns. He is excellent on his edges. They can't get the puck off him. And he's only like 165, 170 pounds right now. And he knows how to use his body to kind of shield the puck and keep guys off of him. And this guy can shoot, like he's good at, has a good shot. He can score that way, goes to the net to score like this, and he can make really good high-end passes in the offensive zone. The other part of this is that you think of the classic Russian guy, like, oh, he might not, he's kind of maybe a dog defensively, or he's not really, the most high effort guy. This guy picks off a ton of pucks in the, in the neutral zone, wins a lot of battles. But again, he doesn't look like he's working the hardest, and he still does this. So I don't know what to do with this guy, because these highlights are incredible. The highlights themselves are first round material. I mean, he is way better than everyone he is playing in this league. And there's other guys that have played in this league this year, like, say, Ryabkin, and he looks far better than Ryabkin did. This is what Ryabkin was supposed to be.
His highlight package is absolutely nuts. I mean, I'm looking at my report for him right now, and my first words is, this is one of the most intriguing prospects I have seen in this draft class. There is a shit ton of upside here offensively. That's my exact first sentence in my report. And so hold on. Yeah. I feel like we've been talking all year about how this is a draft that really thins out, and there's not a lot of guys with high-end offensive upside after the top 15 or 20. Well, this is one guy that we can all put his name on the list of, you looking for a home run swing after the top 20 picks, and a guy that could have some pretty conceivable top 6 upside and be a really excellent goal scorer at the next level. Like, oh man, I know we're not supposed to like guys out of the middle of Siberia these days, but frig, the guy can play.
Well, like, they can't look. We talked about earlier in the year, he had Roger McQueen, right? Like, guy who can handle the puck basically in a phone booth. That's his high-end skill. So this guy's best skill, Zerovski's best skill, is his individual puck handling is outstanding. Now watch this. He literally just fires away from this guy in a turn. They can't catch him. And I saw that.
One thing I noticed about him is that
go ahead.
His skating doesn't look like crazy great, but then all of a sudden, when he's the puck carrier, he looks like a better skater with the puck than without. It's like he has this extra, like, F1 cars, they get DRS in certain spots and they can zoom by the guy. Well, he kind of looks like that. He gets this extra layer of power, and it's 2 strides, and he kind of takes off. But it's weird because you don't see it from him unless he's really handling the puck. But with the puck on his stick, he's unreal.
It's never on a straightforward, like, going straight. He gains speed going around guys or turning or on his crossovers. That's where he's gaining speed on.
So he's a good edge work guy then.
Yeah, like it's definitely, because and he can handle the puck at that speed too, I think, is the other thing. And if you watch the D, and again, all those clips, but you watch all the D, like, they're either hanging way back on him, giving him a ton of space, or they're trying to completely shadow him, in which case he just curls away from them. So, like, they can't defend him. So as of right now, I think he has, what is it? Looks like, so he plays for Tolpar Ufa. So that's, Ufa's kind of junior team, which it's, there's a couple people again on Twitter saying that, like, he'll probably end up playing for them next year if he's going to play like this, or at least get a call up at some point. So I got 37 games played, 19 goals, 21 assists for 40 points. I would like to point out that when November started, he wasn't playing a lot, and he didn't have a ton of points for them. As soon as November hit, he's had the majority of those points have been in those games. Now, he's a winger. He's not going to be a centerman. So there is that part of it.
He's playing center right now.
Well, he can play center, but he looks like he's a winger, which is fine.
Yeah.
But again, he's not a zero defensively. And I think there's room. The other part I stated on my scouting report too is, like, yes, he has some work to do in that end, but he's a willing defender. I mean, he's present in the defensive zone. He has a very good stick. He wins a lot of pucks, both with his stick and with his body control. He can get pucks off of other players, which, again, lower level. But again, if he grows and he gets stronger, that should probably hold at, upper levels. So you're looking at a guy that could possibly be a top line player. That is the upside of this guy. And there's not many guys we've said that, even in the top 15 of the draft, let alone the top, the first round. There's a lot of guys in the top 15 we project to be pretty safe third line, maybe second line players. This guy could be a first line winger.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Now, there's a couple things that are going to be working against him. One is his passport. He's going to go lower than he should. No,
You're right. You're absolutely right.
He's going to go lower than he should because he's Russian, fair or not. He's going to go lower than he should because his quality of competition in that league is not super high. And he's going to go lower than he should because there's going to be a lack of international viewings because they're not allowed to play internationally. And he's going to go lower than he should because scouts are going to have a lack of in-person viewings because, usually your scouts, like, whatever, your Ontario guy is going to see guys in the States and going to see guys in Quebec and out West throughout the year and that sort of thing. And they might go over to Europe and do a 2-week swing and see those guys at least once, right? But there's going to be a lack of in-person viewing. So you're going to have to really, really, really trust whoever is giving you those reports on him. So those 4 things are going to make him go lower than his talent suggests that he should. He has first round talent.
Or there's 1 or 2 teams that are going to actually throw their Russian scout at him and we'll take him higher.
It's only one. Yeah, it's only going to take one team to want to take him. But I am very curious to see where this guy goes.
Another thing that I like too, it was, again, I've said this before, there's a diversity in the offensive game here. He can create for himself with his puck handling. He can create for others with his passing. He can create for others on his rush passing. He can make something out of nothing simply by, creeping into the net or being available for a teammate. He's also very good around the net. On a couple of those highlights there, he sneaks away from the defender and just gets an easy rebound goal. It happened numerous times. He has that ability in front of the net to find loose pucks. So it's not just a one-trick pony in terms of he's dangling around everyone. That's how he's creating his points. No, he can do that, and he can do that very effectively. But there's some other aspects of his offensive game that are very, very good. And now, I think his passing in terms of maybe vision in the offensive zone and managing the game were the best in this class? No. There's a couple other guys I think are probably better, but it's really good. It's definitely above average to really, great. And when you put it together, so again, I remember we talked about Roger McQueen. I had some questions about his actual offensive vision in terms of creating for others. That was kind of and we haven't seen him obviously, so that's kind of, he hasn't had a chance to improve on that. But he was the guy who created for himself very easily. Other guys, don't have that skill. This is the only guy I've seen that can really do that as well. Just from a standstill, kind of create for himself.
Misa is pretty good at it.
Misa's good, but it's a lot of it's built off his speed, right? He has great speed. Again, yes, Misa probably can, but it's a different type of player. Misa's extremely fast. I think a lot of his game's built off his speed. With McQueen, McQueen's a decent skater for his size. It's just his hands are so good that he could kind of have 2 guys layered on him and still beat them. This guy can do that. Now, this guy can also beat one guy and then make the right pass, which McQueen, I question if he could do that all the time. And that's kind of the difference I see here. And McQueen's literally a top 10 pick. Now, McQueen is 6'5", so it's, again, different. And we've seen him before at the international level. It's in Canada. He's scouted. I'm just saying there's similar talent here. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Pump the brakes, sir, a little bit. I don't know that he's top 10 talent. Come on, that's a lot. That said, I do think he definitely has first round talent.
The handling skill is that's the point, right?
Yeah,
Like this is a high-end
yeah,
handling skill.
yeah. He's definitely one of the better puck handlers that I've seen
Yeah.
this year. No doubt there. I wouldn't say, like, I don't know that if now we'll never know, but I don't know that if he was in the WHL, we'd be talking about him in the top 10. But
No, maybe not.
I think we'd be talking about him in the first round.
But I think what has me intrigued is that he has that individual ability, and yet he can make the right play to his teammate afterwards. Like that's what it really like. Sometimes what happens when these guys are so supremely individually skilled that they haven't really had to develop, making teammates better because they're so good. Like they can just create every goal for themselves.
Speaking of which, I'm going to Blainville tonight.
Oh no! Nice segue.
I'm going to Blainville tonight. See Justin Carbonneau play. But Zerovski, I don't know. I have a hard time that someone will take. I don't know that someone will take him in the first round. There's so many factors against that. But I do think someone's going to take him at least in the second. He's way too skilled not to. And if we were drafting based on, if we were ranking the top 32 most skilled players, he would 1,000,000% be on that list. Is he going to be a first round pick? Probably not. I don't think, but I think he could be, but probably not.
As of right now, I'm going to just, as a protest vote, I'm just going to have him in the first round. Just like I haven't seen a guy that can do these things. And now again, I know it's the MHL, but again, people have Ryabkin in the first round. This guy looks substantially better than him. And now I know Ryabkin had a better year last year, and they're
we're going to see Ryabkin here in the second half in the USHL. See what he does. He had a good start. So
no, but it's just what I've seen here. Like I'm literally watching this. I was watching the game, like doing the scouting report. I'm laughing at some of the stuff he's doing.
Dude, he's a supremely talented puck carrier. There's no doubt.
And he's making the right play the majority of the time too. And I don't know. I really liked what I saw. I went down the rabbit hole the one evening and posted a video on Twitter, which some other of the late night hockey Twitter were also commenting on. So that's good job. Good job to that community, because there's definitely some people were talking about him that they looked at him as well, and they're like, "Wow, this guy's unbelievable."
His highlight reel is one of the more fun ones to watch in this draft class. That's for sure. Coming up, our next episode is going to be a lot of fun. We are going to unveil a much larger list. We did our top 25. We're probably looking to unveil our top 50 here, I think, next episode. And we're going to do it in a pretty fun way. We are going to actually build our list live as we record it. Maybe not live, but we're going to record ourselves kind of building the list. And we're not just going to have it prepped in advance and unveil it. So that should be fun. I'm sure we're going to have some fairly heated debates on where to rank guys. A lot of guys.
This guy will be on that list. Zerovski will be on that list.
He will certainly. I think he's certainly going to be inside our top 50. We can both agree there. So look forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And another couple special fun things coming up after that, which I won't mention just now. But for now, I think this is a good place to leave it for today. Boys, thanks for your time and your analysis. And I look forward to getting those last few scouting reports done, and we can get our list going and see if we can keep it within a reasonable amount of time while we do so.
It'll be a fun episode.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you later.